Welcome to another edition of Success Talk with Dr. Herbert Harris. Each week we have guests who have accomplished great things, overcome incredible odds, and made breakthroughs to achieve their greatness. Today we have Dr. Pamela Ellis. Thank you, Doc, for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Well, Doc, it's always a pleasure
Mhm.
when I meet people who are really devoted to helping our children, helping our young people
Yes.
get ahead, because so often there's a void there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was interviewing a teacher and she was saying that at her school, there were like 350 kids to each guidance counselor. So how
Mm,
much direction can you get? How much, real
yeah,
time help can you get? So what what you do
yeah.
is so important.
Thank
Tell us,
you. Thank you for that.
yeah, tell us a little about your program.
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with students from ninth grade into college, and we have a program that's, year by year in terms of things that you do with a ninth and 10th grader are going to look different than a junior or senior. And it's all about helping them with developing those life skills that they'll need, skills of independence and self-advocacy, as well as developing their college list and applying to colleges and scholarships. And with our program, the results have been that 95% of our students are admitted to their top choice colleges, and the average scholarship is $75,000.
Wow, that's
Yes.
amazing. Yeah, yeah.
Thank
And,
you.
and as expensive as school is now,
Mhm.
75,000. That used to buy a house.
I know, right? Not
Yes,
anymore.
not anymore. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it sounds like you have taken a very systematic approach to make a list, and
Yes.
it seems that that's a key
Mhm.
part to really help a young student look at the different schools and evaluate the
Yes.
ones that they'd like to go and
Hmm.
like not to go. That seems to be
Yeah.
very helpful to them.
It actually is. And the thing about it is that, you know, how teenagers are, many of them are visual learners. And what they will do is they'll go online and look at the pictures. And
Mm,
it's just like, something, you need to do more than that. And so we really do give them a systematic approach for how to research colleges and learn about them as it relates to what's a fit for them. And we talk about five factors of fit that supports their success. And all of our work, as well as the program, is based on my dissertation work, and it's around what supports students with being successful as they navigate and also complete college. And
mm.
so yeah, that's how we've set it up, and it actually works.
Well, that kind of led me into my next question is how did you get
Mhm.
started on that? So you said this was a part of your thesis.
Yes, yes, it was. And in terms of getting started, it was actually some parents asking me to work with them. They
Hmm.
saw what I was already doing with my own children around summer programs and other types of out of school experiences. And they knew that I worked in schools.
Mm,
I, did research with a number of districts and education agencies. And so they asked me if I would help them. And so I developed the curriculum based on the findings from my dissertation work. And so it
mm,
was really to help those initial parents out.
yeah. Now,
Hmm.
it's very interesting because so many times when people do their dissertation, it's not a, there's a, it's almost like over there in a corner somewhere. It's rare that I,
It's not very practical.
exactly.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because one of the things that was different in terms of my experience was that I did want to do something that was applied and actually spoke to parents. And it's one of the reasons that I'm not, in academia full time, because I saw the work of a professor as being one that's writing and supporting, the faculty and research, but not necessarily applying it to parents or applying it to students in a real tangible way. And so I really wanted to do something that really spoke to parents, especially because oftentimes, like even with what you said earlier, with the ratio of 300 to 1 counselor, many of those counselors, can have some bandwidth for students, but rarely are they connecting and working with parents. And so I
Mm,
really wanted to be able to support parents because they are even more stressed sometimes with
yes.
helping their kid with wanting to go to college and also being able to pay for it
Mm,
as well. And I just know from my own experience growing up, my mother did not know, how to help me through the process. And when I became a mom, I really wanted to figure that out. How do I help my kids?
wow. Well, that's a very giving approach and an understanding approach, because so often, I won't call it a disconnect, but the parents are doing
Mhm.
what they do
Yeah,
and the students are doing what they do, and they
right.
never really communicate. And sometimes the parents kind of abdicate it, thinking that the guidance counselor and the people at school are going to do it,
Yeah.
and it doesn't get done. So,
Right,
yeah.
right. That is so true. And the thing about it too is that in so many cases, and you might remember this from, when you were a teenager, because I know I certainly do, you hear things differently from your parent than you do from a third party.
Yeah.
And so, oftentimes the parents can't get through to their teen,
Yes.
and things have changed. Things may be different than the way they see things, than the way they've experienced things. And so the kid just kind of feels like they're just saying womp, 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 like they're
Yeah.
nagging them.
Yeah.
And so there's that miscommunication, if you will, or lack of communication around something that's, very important and really has a life-changing impact.
Mhm.
And it may be easier to say that the counselor will take care of it
Yes.
because they can't get through.
Yes. And when many of the
Mhm.
parents were in school, there was a different paradigm.
It was
Bec-
very different.
Yeah, because I remember having a guidance counselor who was on the
Uh-huh.
case, and
Yeah,
everybody who knew who the guidance counselor was, and she would send you
yeah.
in and make sure you were talking college, and
Hmm.
uh, but I can see now how it's probably a very frustrating job to look and say, "Man, I got 300 kids. I can't. Let me just help the one I
Let me
can."
tell you, 300 is not that much. There's a lot of schools where it's the average nationally is around 425.
Wow.
And in places like California, you talking maybe 700 to 1. But yeah, so much has changed just in the last few years.
Uh-huh.
And so to think that it's going to be the same as when you applied is, you know, that's going to cause a lot of headache and stress
Yeah. Yeah.
because it really has changed. And, if your counselor was doing that, you had a pretty good counselor. I know
Yeah.
for me, when I was in high school, one thing my counselor did do was she gave me
Mm.
a stack of fee waivers and said, here you go. And I just applied everywhere. I applied to like 16 different colleges because I
Yes.
didn't know what I was doing. I'm just like, I got to get in somewhere.
Uh-huh.
And so that's how it worked for me. But there was no other guidance aside from that. I just kind of went through books
Yes.
and did everything by hand back
Yes.
then.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I came along in an era. I was at a black school, a segregated
Mhm.
school,
Mm-hmm.
and relatively small. Our graduating class was maybe 100 and maybe 150, so relatively,
Really?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
relatively small.
Yeah.
But like I remember the name of my guidance counselor, Miss Grady, and
Really?
yeah, and I mean she was one that would send for you
Uh-huh.
and to come out and to um I had gotten
Mm.
I actually skipped the 12th grade when I was going to school.
Did
And
you really?
and I had applied to
Mhm.
schools and they had an early entrance program and she
Mm.
really navigated. Matter of fact, I'd gotten a scholarship to go to Fisk from my 10th
Uh-huh.
grade.
Really?
And she said, no, no, you're not going, you're not
Uh-huh.
ready, and did something and got with my mother and they both talked it over and talked it through.
Wow.
And I am so glad that I did not do it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's funny, today with all of the
Hmm.
technology on the computer, I can see
Yeah.
how a lot of young people don't know that they don't know. They can
Yeah.
Google it and find it, and you don't see the
Right.
fine points about getting admitted to a school
Right.
and how systematic you have to be about it.
Right. And I got a great example of that just from a meeting I had with the family right before this call
Mm.
is the daughter is a junior now and we were talking about her college course. I mean, not a college course, but we were talking about her courses for next year and senior year. And she does not want to take a social studies class next year.
Uh-huh.
And what I shared with her is that there are some colleges that will look for 4 years of all 5 core subject areas in order to be a competitive candidate for admission.
Mm.
And so we were talking about that because that's going to, that may shift her list a little bit if
Yeah.
she's, finding out that the colleges are looking for that 4th year of
Mm.
social studies.
Right,
And
right.
so it's little things like that that students may not pick
No.
up or think about. And similarly, I had a student a couple of years ago who didn't want to take foreign language for a 4th year. And it really hurt her in
Yeah.
terms of her admission, especially to
Uh-huh.
one of the colleges that she was most interested in, because they absolutely required 4 years of the same foreign language, and they wanted students to also study a foreign language during college.
Wow.
So yeah.
Well, I guess that's why it's so important to have the parents because the children
Yeah,
don't know that they don't know. I just
that's
don't like
true.
this class and I don't like that class.
I know. Yeah,
And
it's
yeah,
things like that that you have to get beyond that.
yeah. And the
Hmm.
parents in the meantime may not know, but at least if the parents say, well, look, whatever Dr. Ellis says, that's what you're doing. Okay.
Listen to her.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it always fascinated me that
Mhm.
in the like say the 50s and the 60s, I was working with Dr. Mm, he was one of those a brother who was always chosen to be like an interim chancellor. He was like interim
Uh-huh.
chancellor at A&T State
Really?
University, interim
Uh-huh.
chancellor. It'll come to me. Um,
Was
interim
it
chancellor
Coleman?
wasn't Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
It'll interim chancellor at Federal State University. And one of the
Mm.
things he used to talk about, he said, that the eras of the 40s and the 50s, particularly,
Mm-hmm.
parents who were not educated, who had never been to college,
Yeah,
barely gotten through high school, had such a high value for education that
absolutely.
they really basically went to the schools and said, look, help my child get where they need to go and had
Mm-hmm.
that real support of the guidance counselor. The school had that support of the
Right.
parents because they deferred. Said, "Look, I didn't go to college, but you going to college. You got two
Yeah.
choices: go to college or
Mm-hmm.
die." Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. And something that still is a holdover in these days, I've found, because still, whether a family, that looks like us is
Yeah.
at a private or public school, they're still reliant
Yes.
on the guidance counselor.
Yes.
And I see it all the time in my work. And many of them are still, well educated,
Yeah.
but they, that's historical, I
Yeah.
think, that people of color tend to rely more on the school counselor.
Yeah. But then, I kind of takes you to that point. I remember in the autobiography of Malcolm X, there was a point, I
Mm-hmm.
think, where he was saying that when he was going to school, he wanted to be a lawyer. And
Yeah.
the teacher told him, no, well, because you're colored,
Mm-hmm.
you need to learn how to do something
Right.
with your hands, and
Yeah.
steered him to a whole different way. And so,
Right.
I wonder, this is a very interesting area. We have this coming
Mm-hmm.
up in the South a lot, whether a white teacher or a non-black teacher can really connect with a black student when they have not had the black experience. And then when you put in the
Yeah.
guidance counseling module,
Mm-hmm.
of where you want
Yeah.
to go in the future, how much of
Mm-hmm.
that might be impacted by the bias of the guidance counselor who's of a different persuasion.
Yes, I have seen that, and it's not just only in the South. It's something that's, nationwide, and a lot of conversation, happens about this. I had a mom just recently in California reach out to me, and what she shared was that, you know, their school has a new counselor. She's at a private school, and she mentioned that, she would like her son to consider an HBCU, but she recognizes that the counselor has no way of supporting that
Yeah.
choice.
Yes.
And I would say, it could be, across the board in terms of whether they are a person of color or not, because so much of what the counselors are doing that I've, experienced is going to be based on, what fits with that school. And so they may not even have, exposure to certain colleges because they don't come to visit that
Right.
school
Right.
and
Right.
just may not think about it. And many times they're not as uh, you know, detailed or focus on any one student's specific list. So they may give them a choice of colleges that are based on where other students from their high school have applied, but
Wow.
not
Yeah.
necessarily what's a fit for that
That's a fit
student.
for that student. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's just
As
a bandwidth
yeah.
issue, I think. They really
Yeah.
just don't have the
Yeah.
time to spend getting to know that student in such a personal way to say, here are, one of
Yeah.
500 colleges that could be a fit for you.
Yeah. And like when you talk about the historically black colleges, if
Hmm.
you've never been there, you don't know. You
Right,
know, you
right.
really, I mean, I can
Hmm.
see you're not even being slanted that direction, not
Right.
even
Hmm.
understand why somebody would want to go there. You know,
Right.
I find with myself, I went to an Ivy League school,
Hmm.
and it was 40 years before I knew what it was like to go to an HBCU. Yeah.
Right. Same here.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
the whole the fraternity thing, because at my
Hmm.
school we didn't. I think in my class there were two two black graduated out of 700. Five of us started, two of us graduated
Hmm.
out of a class of
Mm,
700.
mm,
And so we didn't have any black fraternities on campus. The white
hmm.
fraternities were not welcoming. Okay.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
that whole Greek life, that whole we missed. I mean, I went to my first fraternity where the boule or something where they do the
Hmm.
steps and all that, and I was just like a kid in a candy
Wow.
shop, like wow, I missed all of this. Now I
Yeah, yeah.
understand. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And my experience is similar in that I, also went to PWIs for graduate school, for undergraduate, and it wasn't real. I mean, I knew about it from other students who had
Uh-huh.
maybe done a semester at an HBCU, and I didn't really know about it for myself though until I joined the faculty of an
Mm,
HBCU, because I
okay.
thought then I really got to see a different aspect of what it meant to
Uh-huh.
attend an HBCU. And what I share, with families when they ask me about it is, you know, they can nurture our kids in a way that a PWI just cannot.
Cannot
And it
do.
gets
Yeah.
back to that conversation that we had earlier around whether or not, a teacher or a counselor that's, non-African American can support a student in the same way as
Yeah.
one who is. And so yeah, it's definitely
Yeah.
a different experience
Yeah. Yeah.
altogether.
I know that the name came to me. Lloyd Vic Hackley. Lloyd Hackley,
It-
call him
okay,
Vic
okay,
Hackley. Yeah.
okay.
And he did a whole he had a whole seminar series on that idea of
Mm-hmm.
preparing students for
Mm-hmm.
college, and that he was very focused on the parental part. That
Really? Is
yeah,
it Hackley?
yeah, Hackley. Yeah, Vic
Okay.
Hackley, Lloyd Vic
Okay.
Hackley. Yeah,
I'll
and
check
you
that
see,
out.
yeah, he's been acting chancellor at A&T, at Federal
Uh-huh.
State, and I think at another one. There's certain guys that have that administrative background, and so they can sort of come
Right.
in and take over a ship and keep it rolling until they can find a chancellor.
Yeah.
Lloyd Vic Hackley.
And one thing I will just say in terms of that, is that, the percentage of Black counselors and teachers is so small.
Yes,
It's so small nationwide. And not only do we need to encourage our own to go into those fields, but also, really support other teachers as well in terms of being able to support our kids, because that it's going to take a long time to get to parity in that regard. And so, in working with what we have now, we really do need to make sure that non-teachers of color know how to support our kids, and
yeah,
to uh, introduce them to opportunities like HBCUs and
yeah,
other colleges that are a great fit for them that they may not be aware of,
yes.
and to have that same support in the classroom as well.
Dr. Ellis, this whole conversation is something that is needed. you know,
Hmm.
and on a national level, because when we look at the entire landscape of education of Black kids,
Yeah.
that it's like there are so few interconnects in the system where there's
Mhm.
a pathway of understanding. It's say, okay, I
Yeah,
understand.
that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah, that's true.
yeah,
And I see things being done in pockets
hmm,
and things that are done in a very ephemeral way as
yeah,
opposed to something that's sustaining.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so you're right. It is a
yeah,
conversation that needs to be elevated, and one that needs to continue in terms of how do we put in place some processes and systems that support
yes,
all
yeah,
teachers to
yeah,
support our kids.
yes. I tell you, it's almost like we need to do a Marshall Plan of education.
Mhm.
From the top down and from the bottom up, and
Yes.
really, really attack it, because that's the
Mhm.
future. I mean,
Yeah.
does I was looking at a program, and they was talking about
Mhm.
many companies now
Yeah.
are not requiring a college degree,
Mhm. Yeah.
and and that but at the same time, I don't see that the trades area. It seems that the trades, the building trades, when I went to school, you had to take a trade. I mean,
Yeah.
that was a part of your your
Mm-hmm.
education.
Yeah.
Electrician, a draftsman, and I have,
Mm-hmm.
my contemporaries were like the head draftsman for Consolidated Edison in New York. Because
Mm-hmm.
every time they laid lines and power
Yeah.
cables, they have to have a draftsman to lay it all out. And
Mm-hmm.
others,
Yeah.
went on to become contractors and whatnot. I don't see that same thing happening now to kind of balance out
Y-
this
Yeah.
de-emphasis of college.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm really mixed, Dr. Harris, on a lot of that. And I'll tell you why. There in so many places, there's still this big stigma around vocational training.
Uh-huh.
And I just, you know, I see that so oftentimes it's uh, a way to put us in a track that is marginalized in many
Mm.
ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I had a couple of students, a young woman in Texas, and her school offered cosmetology. And she likes to braid hair. And so she's thinking, okay, I can do that. Well, if you do that, then all of the other courses you're not going to be able to take
Uh-huh.
because of the way it's set up,
Structured, yeah.
at her school.
Uh-huh.
And what that would have done is limited her to only doing that from here on out.
The
Well,
rest of our life.
something,
Yeah.
a cosmetologist also needs to have some business skills that
Yes.
could be a benefit, understanding math, understanding chemistry, so that they can really grow beyond
Yes.
just them only doing hair and being paid when they are working.
Right.
So I mean, it limited her possibilities.
Yes.
And so I just think that, it just, I don't know, it just really just doesn't seem equitable the way the vocational tracks are really done in a lot of schools.
Yeah.
And this whole notion of we don't need college anymore, I think it doesn't apply to us.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. Because if we're trying to compete to get a certain job opportunity, what can rule us out? Not having an education.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I just feel like, just as the saying was when I was younger, and probably when you were younger as well, that we have to be twice as good to compete.
Yes.
And so not having an education is just a way for others to then say, something, you're not qualified.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not qualified. And I've heard that, even with all of, the degrees I have at this point in the institutions I've been to, I have been at different points in my life where I've been told I'm not qualified or I'm overqualified. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Really? With
Yeah.
this Stanford PhD, I can't
Yeah.
do that job? Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I know that's, in part, it has to do with my color. It has to do with me being a woman. Yeah, I don't know which one it is, or if it's just a combination of both.
Yeah.
But I've experienced that, and it cannot be overlooked, just the value of having, that degree and being able to compete and not, have to just always take no for an answer and be told that, no, you haven't done X.
Yes. 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 They find ways to exclude you, based on as they say, they move the goalposts.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that goalpost
Yeah.
keeps
Yeah.
moving.
Moving. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I
You
didn't
know,
mean to take it in that
no,
direction,
no,
but
no, no. I mean, that's where it needs to go because that's reality.
it is reality. It
And
is
yeah,
reality.
that's the reality.
Yeah.
And until people can face it,
Yeah.
I, I'm a part of I'm a part of a racial dialogue group, and at some point in the group, I had to say to the person, I said, well, like you need to go back to your people and talk to them because I can't make you understand me. You're here in this conversation, and as we talk, you like
Mm.
just marvel at some of the things that my life has been about, and
Mm.
and it may change you, but until you can share that with your people, it's never going to go any
Right.
further than this. And so
Exactly. Yeah,
this, the
exactly.
systemic nature of it will continue. Mm, wow,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Hmm.
Doc, it's funny. I was so excited about just your message. I normally like to get a little about a person's background, their
Uh-huh.
family, how they grew up, and their education. But
We just started talking.
yeah, we just got right into it. So maybe share a little about your background, where you grew up, and your early
Oh my
years, and
goodness.
how you
Yeah.
started out to become the person you are now.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to give you the abbreviated version,
Yes, yes,
okay?
yes, yes, yes. Okay,
So I actually grew up in Memphis, Tennessee,
okay.
and I am a first generation college graduate and I'm a first generation high school graduate. So my mom finished eighth grade and my dad finished 10th. And my mom sharecropped.
Uh-huh.
And so she had me at an older age. I'm the youngest of nine. And, as far as leaving Memphis, was really college that helped me to, grow beyond Memphis. I grew up in a segregated environment. And so I know what that's like and how that affected my schooling and everything else. But like you talk about in your book around the universal law of persistence, I just, knew in my heart that I wanted to do more. I wanted to go away to school and really had to fight in some ways to do that because my parents had never heard of Stanford. They didn't know what that was. And it just didn't mean anything to them. And so I just really wanted to go away to college. And because I had gotten in, I thought,
Yeah,
wow, I'm going to go to
yeah,
that school.
yeah.
And so yeah, and I went, there, and when I got there, my mom gave me $70, Dr. Harris, and I thought that was great money.
Uh-huh.
And the next day, when I went to the bookstore, my books were $350 for that first quarter. And I just had no idea of what I was getting into.
Mm,
And it was really that experience of not having, but having a strong desire to have more
yeah.
that I think propelled me. And that always, kept me going because I grew up, in a project. And I remember my fifth grade teacher telling me that I wouldn't amount to anything.
Wow.
And so that, just always stayed with me. It kept me going.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Mm,
yeah, so that's a little bit, about my background.
uh-huh.
And I have, since I feel proven her wrong,
Uh-huh.
that
Yes.
I have amounted to something. And I mean, I think, certainly becoming a mom and having a son,
Yes.
really deepened my interest in education and wanting to figure out how do I help him, especially
Mm,
because I know I knew what the statistics were
yes.
for Black
Yes.
males and just didn't want that for my son. And
Yes.
so that's, how I started getting more into research and really decided to go back to get my doctorate degree in education.
Wow.
And I went back to Stanford to do that. And when I went back to Stanford, I had three kids
Uh-huh. Okay.
and just, a big, big desire and a dream and just wanting to figure out what to do, how to help our kids. And it
Wow.
wasn't just my kid, but all Black kids.
Yes. Yes. Wow, Doc.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's what it takes because
Mm-hmm.
somebody's got to care and somebody's got to act on it. You know, a lot people can
Yeah.
stand around and talk about the problem, look at the problems, pretend the
Mm-hmm.
problem's not there. But for there to
Mm-hmm.
be any meaningful change, people have to see it and understand it and act
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
And I just
Absolutely.
give thanks for you and your mission because,
Mm-hmm.
well, and when you look back, was there any particular obstacle that stood in your way, your David and Goliath moment that stood in your way to keep you from moving to that next level? As you were saying, when you went back with a dream. But was
Mm-hmm.
there any particular obstacle and how'd you overcome it?
Oh my goodness. I feel like there have been obstacles, all along my path.
Uh-huh.
And I think even now as an entrepreneur, um, there are mindset obstacles that
Uh-huh.
come into play. And one of the things that I recall growing up, and remember, my mom had been a sharecropper, and so her mindset was a little bit different.
Mhm.
She was a seamstress,
Okay.
and I never forget Dr. Harris. She was working at a dry cleaners,
Uh-huh.
and she was doing a great job there as a seamstress. And the guy who owned it said to her that he wanted to put her name on the window.
Uh-huh.
And she said no to that. And I
Uh-huh.
thought, really? Why did you say that? Because that could be great because you could really grow your business.
Uh-huh.
And she was just like, no, if I do that, then I'm going to be liable and could be sued.
Hmm.
And so just that mindset of
Yeah.
staying in her place, and I
Yeah.
get that growing up in the South
Wow.
and being in
Yeah.
a segregated environment, but it really spoke to mindset. And now today, as an entrepreneur, there are times when I get nervous,
Uh-huh.
like when payroll is coming,
Yeah.
am I going to make payroll? Is
Yes.
someone going to be upset with me and sue me? So it's those
Yeah.
kinds of things. So I think the biggest obstacle oftentimes is mindset. And there are just those times when you're about to go to that next level that you kind of question yourself.
Wow.
And that's what I love about that chapter again around persistence in your book, because you talk about it as just kind of part of what keeps you going is your self concept.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's just like part of my self concept is not wanting to let all of my employees down. It's like
Wow.
these are
Yeah.
households, these
Yes.
are other families, that my business is supporting.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I have to make payroll,
Yes.
and I can't, let those things get in the way
Yes.
in terms of that mindset of I need to shrink,
Yes. Yes.
because so many times, I've been told that, I'm less than or that I'm not enough. And, it's easy to still, you know, have that going through my head at
Yeah.
times, but I have to have a self concept that no, this can be done. Yes, I can reach that goal.
Wow. Wow. That was profound. I mean, that really I think so many people have that feeling. You've expressed it so beautifully. And thank you for
Yeah.
the commentary on the book. The book has
Hmm.
been guiding me for the last 20 years. And
Yeah.
any any chapter that evidently that chapter on persistence really stood out.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It did. It
Uh-huh.
did because, I was introduced to your book recently. And, when we talked about this interview and you had
Right.
shared questions, you mentioned about just kind of where I was with,
Uh-huh.
yeah, what my situation was in terms of reading the book. And that stood out most to me because that's the key thing, the ingredient that I need most in terms of continuing as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
because there are, daily, messages of no, you know.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes.
And people saying, oh, I can't sign up at this time or whatever, but that can't stop,
You can't.
what we're
Yeah.
doing and
Wow.
the vision that we have to grow to the next level and to continue to serve thousands of families.
Wow. Well, Doctor, I see we're at just about our time limit.
Yes.
You have
Thank
shared
you.
so much powerful information. I know that our listeners are going to enjoy it. Any final words you'd like to share?
Oh, wow. I would say that for any parent who's listening that has a college bound teen, to know that there are tons of colleges that are a great fit for them,
Yes.
and make sure that in thinking about that college that's a great fit for them, that it always starts with their teen. And it's not about the brand name, it's about what's a good fit for their teen. And that will lead them to scholarships, admissions, their heart's desire in terms of their dreams for college. And I would love to hear about their success so
Yes.
they can connect with me on any of the social platforms, the
Yes. And give us
education
your
doctor.
website. Yeah. Give us
Yeah.
your website. Uh-huh.
The website is compasscollegeadvisory.com.
CompassCollegeAdvisory.com. Okay. Well,
Yes,
Doc,
it
thank
is.
you so much for this powerful information. I know that people are going to want to listen
Mhm.
to this time and time again. And we're going to have to do some
Thank
follow
you.
up because I can tell that you have an
Yes.
understanding of a problem that many people don't even know exists. But it's impacting our young
True.
people. Yeah, it's really impacting our
Yeah,
young people. And when they know
absolutely.
more about it, I think
Mhm.
there'll be more of a desire to fix it. So thank you so much
Yeah,
for being with us.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And for our guests, this has been another edition of Success Talk. Thank you so much for joining us. We have enjoyed your presence, and I guarantee you that when you listen to this interview over and over, it will help you be what you want to be, do what you want to do, and have anything you desire, always knowing that the best is yet to come. And so it is.